Good afternoon and welcome to the Chubb Cyber Services webinar hosted by Stucky and Company. I want to thank everybody for coming. But before we get started, I want to go over a few things. First, on the right-hand side of your screen, normally on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a GoToWebinar control panel. You can ask questions there, and we actually encourage you to ask questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. But if we don't get to your question during the webinar or afterwards, we'll answer them by phone or by email, whichever is most appropriate. We will also have a follow-up email that will go out this afternoon. It'll have a link to the recording of the webinar, the PowerPoint presentation. We have an appetite guide, some frequently asked questions, and a playbook that we can share with you, among some other things that we'll have through Russ's presentation. So in 2019, Stucky and Company is celebrating 28 years as a MGA, offering our agents access to solid A-rated carriers like the Hartford and Safeco, Travelers, MetLife, and Chubb that we're talking about today, just to name a few. We have 9 specialty programs, and we have what's called a 151 promise. So that's a complete service requests and applications. If they're received by 1 o'clock, we get them out by 5. If it's received by 5, we get them out by 1 o'clock the next day. And it's really helped us grow and get a lot of satisfied customers. As an MGA, we do all of the things here. We create the program, underwrite to it, rate, quote, bind, issue the policies in-house. We endorse any of the policies that we write, renew, invoice, report to the carriers, and report to you, our agents. We integrate with our carrier partners as well as with you. So we have a data API that we can give you. It'll give real-time rates on BOP, comp, and professional. And then we have claims. Sometimes we handle the claims, sometimes not, and we always do the marketing and training. These are 8 of the programs that we have. SafetyTek is a technology E&O that we're talking about today. We'll come back to that a little bit later. The Spire A&E for architects and engineers. Harbor Guard for marinas and boat dealerships. We have about 350 different classes of miscellaneous professional. We have what's called the Element program, which is a green energy insurance program. We have personal lines, which is home, auto, boat, and high value home. We have a online rater that we use on the personal lines that we can offer to your agency as well. We do commercial lines, BOP, comp, auto, bonds, EPLI, D&O, all those types of coverages for small business, middle market, and national accounts. And then we do surplus lines accounts as well. So if it falls outside of the guidelines of the personal and commercial, we have a automatic submission to the surplus lines division of our company. Before I introduce Russ Cohen from Chubb, I'd just like to say this is for the SafetyTek program. These are some of the cyber services that our current customers and prospective customers, I guess, get if they insure under the SafetyTek program, or again, Russ will go over this as well, but also if they insure through Chubb. So as a lot of you know, I see some very, very familiar attendees. You know, we started the SafetyTek program in '96 when it was Cigna back in the day. ACE bought Cigna and ACE bought Chubb now, and took the Chubb name. And in 96, we had a surplus lines, errors and omissions policy that was basically a computer consultant policy. And over time, we filed that on an admitted basis. Then we refiled rates and rules and policy forms. So we now have a multiple insuring agreement with errors and omissions, E&O. The multiple insuring agreement also includes electronic media and network operation. And what, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, we added cyber as part of that multiple insuring agreement, so that we've had all kinds of crazy changes leading the market under our technology product, and that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So honestly, one of the reasons we wanted to talk through this today is many of our insureds and the agents that represent us don't know that these cyber services are actually included at no additional cost. So we wanted to go over those cyber services and give you a chance to hear it directly from the carrier about the services that we offer. So with that, I'd like to thank Russ Cohen, Vice President, North America Financial Lines with Chubb, and Maggie Hammett, Lead Professional Liability Underwriter for Stucky and Company, for presenting and making themselves available for questions during and after the webinar on the availability and advantage of our products and services.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. For those who don't know, this is Russ Cohen. For those of you who that don't know me, I've been at Chubb for about 13 years. The bulk of that time, I was actually not on the underwriting side. My background is in information security and risk management, and I was the global security architect for the company for 8 years before I was asked to come over to the business side and the underwriting side within financial lines and build out a lot of the services and take my background and build out the services that we'll talk about today. And my perspective is unique. And coming from, working within the company and helping protect our own assets, then shifting over to the underwriting side and helping see through both a financial lens and also through a different underwriter risk management lens, and obviously working with our brokers, it's a very different perspective, trying to help all of our policyholders reduce risk across different market sizes, different industries. It's been quite an adventure over the last 5 years with the diversity in the marketplace as it relates to cyber. We'll go through a lot of that stuff today. You can go to the next slide. So, quick disclaimer, I'll kind of add on to what Dwight said. Just obviously I just need to reinforce that obviously the policy dictates what services are available to each of the policyholders. We'll talk in general terms of what is available, but always have to go back and make sure that based on the specific policy that any individual insured has, that which services are available. So excellent. So before we dive into what's available from Chubb, I kind of wanted to take a step back, trying to get an understanding of the audience, not doing, talking about services. And I know this might seem a bit basic in terms of insurance policy benefits that are not cyber specific, and just talk about it at a high level to get everyone on the same page. So insurance policy benefits, we've all familiar with them, whether it's home, auto, life, etc. These are services that are typically available after you bind a policy. And a lot of the services that come with insurance policies. They are offered at various costs. Some are complimentary, some are flat rate, meaning there's a pre-negotiated rate for a particular service. And then finally, you can get reduced rates from various third-party providers, or in some cases, the carrier directly. Most insurance policy benefits are there to, whoops, one more slide. There you go. Most of the insurance policy benefits are obviously to help the consumer, but they're typically aligned with not just giving a reduced rate for a particular piece of software or a particular service, but they are aligned to reducing risk and claim expenses for the carriers and for the insureds. Insurance policy benefits, some of them can be considered a one-time benefit, that they use it once and then they don't use it again, but others are seen throughout the policy period. And as I mentioned before, most of these insurance policy benefits are not delivered by the carrier directly. They're typically delivered by third parties. And using, you see the example on the slide that from the auto insurance industry, where the auto insurance industry years ago started taking advantage of the onboard diagnostics that were built into cars. And a lot of the automakers started creating, whether it's a Bluetooth device or now they all use pretty much Bluetooth and a iPhone or Android app, that those devices, the OBD devices, provide telemetry into the from the car to the app, and then feed that back to a third party that helps correlate that data and provide it back to the carrier to help provide reduced premiums. And in some cases, they provide that information to help you improve your driving across the board. So it's just a kind of a general example of, an ongoing service that some insurance carriers provide from an auto perspective. But as it relates to cyber insurance benefits, and I'm talking in general terms, so it's not not just specific to Chubb, but generally across the industry. When you look at cyber insurance benefits, they fall into two main categories. The first one is response, and the second one is mitigation, or you can think of these as post-event and pre-event services. So you'll see a lot of the services categorized as things that can help the cyber policyholder reduce the exposure to a loss when something happens, so when an incident occurs. And then there's other benefits that happen before. What can an insurance, after binding, what can a cyber insurance policyholder do to reduce that risk before something happens? And they're the two main categories. Go to the next one. So continuing on, going one level deeper on the response services, you'll often see these four services. They might be named differently from different carriers, but these are kind of four categories that you can see. The first one is hotline-based services. So what if something happens from a cyber perspective, who does the policyholder call first? And the hotline services are not particularly to tender a claim, because they don't know if the incident occurred or not. It's something that they can call, and without even tendering a claim to the carrier, they can have a discussion on, whether a incident should be reported and tendered as a claim, or it's actually a false positive and that no action needs to be taken. So even before a claim is tendered, providing resources to that policyholder as kind of the first responders, to help to get them what they need 24 hours a day. But in addition to the hotline services and having that sort of call center, in addition to that, there's also, if a policyholder calls to get initial triage support for a cyber incident, these are typically done by third-party law firms that they can talk to. And because these law firms specialize in cyber and privacy matters, they're able to talk to these firms the insureds are able to talk to these firms under privilege and gain insight on what to do. Once again, this is even before a claim is filed or a claim is tendered or the carrier is notified. So situations where we've seen in the news where a company gets breached and there's PR being generated very, very quickly. It's a good example of how you can work with these triage support services even before remediation occurs and start reducing that exposure to a loss by providing these services ahead of time. And from a cyber perspective, these incidents can go on for a very long time. But that initial response, think of it like the, when an ambulance shows up when calling 911, they're there to make sure that, at first aid, that nothing else bad happens or to reduce anything from getting worse. That's really what these triage support services are, to really give you that helping hand and get you experts right away. But lawyers and legal services are not the only things that are required when an incident comes in. And there are additional support services that are available in different specialties, like computer forensics, I mentioned PR, or notification services, or additional legal support that could be required for any given incident. And the triage support services, just like similar to, if you're admitted to the emergency room doctors are going to take care of, sort of stopping the bleeding, but they're not going to take care of everything. If there's other specialists that are needed, they will start calling those specialists in for those particular specialties, depending on the nature of the accident that got the person into the emergency room. Same thing here as it relates to cyber. There are multiple disciplines required for any given incident, and that's what those triage support services will tap into. And then last but not least, and this is obviously common, is the claim management. Once retention is hit and you need to start managing a claim, this is where the carrier's claim services will come in and then help continue, and the handoff goes from the triage support services through the specialist into claim management, where they're all working together to reduce that exposure to a loss. From a mitigation services perspective, remember these are the pre-event services before an incident happens. I put in 3 very high-level categories here, going one level deeper. Carriers will typically have a policyholder portal. These are online resources where the carrier can provide, through its own knowledge and experience or through third-party tools, cyber risk management, news, trends, and online training, so that the policyholders can log in at any time and gain access to information, as opposed to just going on the internet and searching for particular events or particular incidents. Another category of mitigation services are cyber software solutions. So this is where carriers will offer various tools, apps, and software related to cybersecurity that policyholders can tap into to help them understand and gauge particular areas of risk. And we'll go into some details in a minute on those. And last but not least, from a mitigation perspective, obviously from a software solutions or apps or even a portal, a lot of times, as I said earlier, there is such a diverse group of policyholders that exists as it relates to cyber. So when there is no one size fits all. So whether through the carrier itself or through third parties, there are consultative services that are completely customizable and can help policyholders walk through various risk management scenarios that they may have. Okay. So as it relates, why this is even more important for cyber in terms of why these services are critical and going beyond risk transfer from a cyber perspective. If you think about risk from a cyber perspective and compare it to, let's say, property, go a completely different area. If we're looking at a property risk and that risk is being underwritten, a building that was underwritten as 5 floors with with an address at a certain location, 6 months later, the building's probably not going to grow five floors and probably is not going to pick up and walk to a different address. So the risk is fairly consistent. But from a cyber perspective, you think about how much changes, not just in 6 months, but within, say, 6 minutes after binding, or even 6 minutes before binding, that the policy there is yes, it's a risk transfer vehicle, but from a carrier perspective and cyber, something can happen anytime, the day after binding, or even before the binding happens. So it's really important that these services are available to the policyholders the second the policy is signed. Expertise is often needed from legal counsel that specializes in security and privacy. It's important to note that there are law firms out there today that all they do is cyber and privacy. It's a particular niche that has been created so that attorneys and law firms have those specialties. And whether it's a law firm that's all they do, like some of them are out there today, or within a law firm, they have a division within that law firm or a group within that law firm that's all they do is specialize in cyber and privacy matters. It's extremely important. I mentioned this before, all companies are different and they all are at various levels of maturity as it relates to their security program needs. So it's very important that these things can adapt and be flexible for all the insureds. All companies today and every individual depends on one or more third parties for their information technology services, whether it's a cloud provider, whether it's a telecommunication provider, whether it's a hardware provider. Everyone individually and as companies rely on third parties for technology. And as I mentioned before, every single person on this phone, every single person on this planet is impacted by technology, whether you have a device or not. And it's important that, once the risk is transferred, that we're talking about servicing the accounts. Excellent. So that's kind of a general overview of cyber services themselves and kind of a general categorization from a carrier perspective with nothing too specific. But I wanted to talk about how we do it a little bit differently, and you'll see a lot of the themes from before, but it's kind of how we approach our cyber services. So our goal overall is really helping, and you may have heard me mention this before, it's helping limit the losses when that event occurs by providing services that help our policyholders analyze and mitigate cyber-related exposures. So we know they're going to happen. What can we do, whether it's providing them a hotline to call or mitigation services, so that when that event occurs, we reduce that exposure to a loss as much as possible? Our approach, all of our services today are based on our 10+ years of claim experience. We don't launch any service unless it has applicability from reducing claims, albeit they're just our claims data. It's a lot, but it's just our claims data. But we want to make sure that it's going to help reduce claims and reduce the claims expenses for our policyholders. In addition, we look at the industry. We talk to our policyholders. We talk to our brokers and talk to industry security specialists. What is the industry seeing in terms of current and future risk? I mentioned there's not a one-size-fits-all. We want to provide services that are not, shrink-wrapped where our policyholders have to just take it as is. We want to provide services that are flexible and adapt, whether it's from a cost perspective or a deployment perspective, services they can tap into and they can flex to their needs as opposed to just accept them as they are. And I want to say probably the most important thing and the most challenging thing for us is I mentioned before about relying on third parties to deliver a lot of services and solutions. The third parties, we spend a lot of time making sure that we maintain relationships with a diverse panel of partners. And I would love to highlight in bold the relationships word, because that's what it takes a lot to maintain these relationships. And we spend a lot of time quarterly vetting, monthly vetting, ongoing vetting of our vendors, and keeping that relationship solid, because we want our vendors, or I should say our partners, we want our partners to treat our policyholders as if they were Chubb employees themselves. And that's the level of relationship that we want to get with our partners. So out of that goal and our approach to services come forward some of the service offerings. I don't have them all listed here. I'm just highlighting 4 that are applicable to today's conversation. There's certainly more, and we can provide additional information at future discussions or online. So the first service, and I would say probably the most important one, and every time I do an onboarding call or an orientation call with a policyholder, I always will say, if the presentation ended here, this is the main thing we want them walking away with. We want to make sure that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that they can call someone and get help immediately. And whether it's through the 800 number listed in their policy, or by downloading the Cyber Alert app, which we launched about 1.5 years ago, we want to make sure that they can call someone at their fingertips, have someone to call at their fingertips. So if you go back to the, if you recall the slide about the response services, this is our hotline service so that they can get access to those live people 24 hours a day. It's not a recording, it's not an online forum, it's a live person when they press the button, or obviously when they call the 800 number. The Chubb Cyber Alert, if they want to attach photos of ransomware or phishing emails, et cetera, they can do that. It logs the incident and any history, and it will also, if multiple policyholders, if multiple people within a particular policyholder register with the app, they'll all see the alert go out, and they can all collaborate on what's happening with any particular incident. Once the call goes into Cyber Alert, then that hotline service that within Cyber Alert will route to one of our incident response coaches, who will then begin to work directly with the policyholder. I would say it's probably within, on average, once they clear conflicts, probably within 5 to 10 minutes on average, they're calling the policyholder back and engaging with them once the conflicts have cleared. In addition, the Cyber Alert app has all the contacts in there of every response team specialist. So if they need to get a hold of the Triage Support Services or a forensics provider or talk to PR, all the contacts are in there as well. And another important thing to note about Cyber Alert was a feature a lot of our brokers asked us for. They do have the option to configure a broker email so that an insured can configure a notification to go out to the broker so that the broker's aware if they were to report an incident. Okay. So some other offerings that we have available. Like I said, if the presentation ended right there, that's probably the most important thing that we like to leave with policyholders, but there's still more. So one of the things that we've noticed from a claim and industry experience is passwords unfortunately still plague the industry from a security perspective. And we wanted to bring to market a solution that can help our policyholders create and use stronger passwords across the web. And about 3 years ago, we partnered with Dashlane, and most recently we made this actually a global relationship with Dashlane. So every policyholder now has access to a piece of software that they can install on their phone, they can install on their desktop, they can install on any device, and it will actually help them make their passwords better and actually make their lives a lot easier because they don't have to remember all these passwords. And the passwords that they create with Dashlane can actually be stronger than the ones they had before. In addition, Dashlane will let the individual know if they're sharing passwords across multiple accounts. I know a lot of us do this when we're used to using complex passwords or more complex passwords, is reusing the same password over and over and over again for multiple accounts, which means if one account is compromised, typically, a threat actor is going to try those credentials on multiple accounts that you may have. And Dashlane helps to make sure that you reduce the number of shared passwords that you may have. And last but not least, something that Dashlane offered in their newest version, which helps contribute to the ongoing monitoring for our policyholders, is they have a personal VPN and also dark web monitoring for their email accounts. So if an email account is discovered on the dark web, or their credentials are discovered on the dark web, they'll actually get an alert in Dashlane and help them replace that password immediately. So it's an ongoing service they have access to throughout the year. The next one is a solution from BitSite. And although BitSite tends to be interpreted as a more technical solution for a more technical audience, the way that we like to think about BitSite is it's really like this virtual canary in a coal mine. BitSite is able to pull in public internet traffic from multiple sources. And based on the company or the insured's network addresses, they can take this public information, this public internet traffic, and correlate that data back to a particular company. And by correlating that data and analyzing that data, they can actually see signs of things like malware or BitTorrent traffic or other malicious traffic that may be emanating out of a particular company. And it pulls all this information together along with other data points and is able to give a high-level score, kind of like a similar to like a FICO financial score or something to that effect, and give you a score. But it's also able to give you 12 months of history of what that score has been, and you can see signs of when the score might have dropped, when it increased, and how you compare to industry averages. And our policyholders use this, and they use it to help them get better at their own information security program. And it gives them visibility into things that may not be working well. And when things they notice, like a score drops, they get an alert that a score dropped 50 points or 100 points, they're able to engage with BitSite to say, what happened here? How come our score went down? Or they're able to call us and say, our score went down for a particular reason. Why did this happen? And it's kind of like I said, that virtual canary in a coal mine. You see something might be going wrong and help potentially mitigating that well before an event happens. And they're able to get access to BitSite for 14 days at no cost. They can obviously look at 12 months of historic scores during that 14 days. They can download reports and distribute them within the particular company. And we also worked a partnership deal with BitSite that a policyholder can extend that to the full year for $3,000, which is well below the market price for that service. But we wanted to make sure policyholders can get a taste of what BitSite can do and get value. Even in 14 days, they get an idea of what they look like over the last 12 months. And then if they want to extend it, after taking a look at it, they have the option to do that for $3,000. And no other market can offer that. And last but certainly not least, we saw, obviously human error is one of the core problems from a claims perspective that we've been seeing. And about 3 years ago, we launched, actually 2 years ago, we launched an online portal because we saw a fairly large gap in the number of companies that don't have core security awareness training within their environment. And we wanted to bring to market two online courses that a policyholder could easily deploy and distribute to their employees. And they can deploy two courses, a basics course, which takes about 20 minutes to complete, which is the bare bone rudimentary information security 101 important things they need to know. And there's a second course that's available to them that's targeted more at information technology professionals or legal professionals. It takes about 40 minutes to complete, dives one step deeper in terms of what they should know from an information security perspective. And most importantly, it allows one or more managers or administrators within the company to pull statistics to see who's taken the course, who's not taken the course, and what they're getting at the final test scores at the end. So it's a very valuable tool, and has the uptake on this service has been phenomenal. In addition, SkillBridge also allows us, if the policyholder wants to, SkillBridge has a large library of courses. So we have had policyholders in particular industries like healthcare. They wanted a course on HIPAA compliance. The policyholder was able, this is at their cost, of course, they're able to license an additional course from SkillBridge, implement that course for their company, and immediately deploy that course to every employee that needs to learn about HIPAA compliance. We've also seen uptake on PCI compliance courseware as well. In addition to the complementary services that are available, and I mentioned this before, there are other services that policyholders can tap into. There are flat rate services that help policyholders gauge and understand key areas of risk. For $3,000 each, they could run a simple phishing simulation against 500 employees to see who falls victims to phishing attacks, to further enhance what they're doing from an awareness perspective, to see maybe if their awareness training is working. They could do a response planning review, not a tabletop, but a response plan review where they can either get help jump-starting the creation of an incident response plan, which we've unfortunately found a lot of policyholders don't have an incident response plan, or if they do have an incident response plan, help them review their current incident response plan to make sure it is aligned with current standards for what incident response plan should be, and as well integrated within the information security, within the insurance policy as well. The other one, flat rate of service that's available, is a vulnerability assessment. We still do see threat actors going in from the outside to try and break into the internet-facing devices of our policyholders. We wanted to provide a simple way to do an automated scan of external devices to see what vulnerabilities lie in web application servers or mail servers, firewalls, etc. There are also a host of other partners that we have established for those customers that need to go beyond just the basics and want to look at other enterprise level cyber risk services, things like encryption of data at rest, or looking at security operations, or looking at getting compliant with GDPR, HIPAA, or PCI, or looking at implementing advanced anti-malware. We've partnered with 5 other companies that can help our policyholders address these bigger areas of risk when they are ready. From a customization perspective, I mentioned about relationships before and the time that we take to establish those relationships, but we also do appreciate that our policyholders take that time as well to establish those relationships. And we want to make sure that our policyholder have the option that they can request bringing their own firms, kind of like bring your own partner, and allow them to add existing firms and have those firms endorse onto their policy for incident response. So if a policyholder is already working with and has a long-standing relationship with a particular forensic provider, absolutely, we'll work with them to review that vendor and make sure the rates are in line, make sure their services are there. Absolutely, that is who better to service the policyholder for forensics than a vendor that they've been working with for all those years. PR is another great example, or legal. We get a lot of requests from policyholders that want to endorse and have access to the various elements in their policy with those vendors endorsement of their policy. We also do enable reimbursement options. So for some policyholders that are looking to explore a particular area that we don't have listed anywhere, or they're looking to have a particular security initiative jump-started, we can look to offer loss control funding to help them jumpstart that campaign or that effort. And it's an underwriting decision that has to occur, but once we review and approve that, with an underwriting decision, we can actually help and reimburse the policyholders for their services. It helps mitigate future losses. And last but certainly not least, what's the most important to us, and you'll be hearing more from us, in the coming year. We're here. the day after binding, me and my team are there to help service the policyholders. We're there for obviously the brokers. It's an ongoing conversation, and you'll be hearing a lot of that from us over the next year. That it's the day after binding, we're there for you. And we want to make sure that there's a direct line of communication to resources that can help guide and advise on cyber risk decisions. And I think that's it. I think the slide should say thank you. Any questions? But once again, I do appreciate everyone who joined, taking the time and giving myself the opportunity to share this information.
Right on. Well, thank you, Russ. That is awesome. We have a few questions coming in, and I'll just kind of start from the top and go over. But I want to thank you for doing that, just to identify, the response services. Like you said, the Chubb Cyber Alert, as being the first response, is huge. And then the additional services that you guys have lined up is pretty cool too. Honestly, in all honesty, I thought Dashlane was really just another password app, but like you said, not only does it manage the passwords and you don't have to enter them, but it also suggests for strong, to strengthen, options to strengthen the passwords, and provide the personal VPN and the dark web monitoring is really, I think, where it stands above the competition when it comes to that. And the BitSite, the 14-day trial for the malicious rating, and kind of scoring, your site and traffic is way cool with an executive report. A lot of people need that, and our requests, the CPAs and accounting firms, when they do the audits at the end of the year, they require something like that. And that's a great option. And the training, the skill bridge and the training, not only do they train the employees on the basics, and even going further into it on the the IT training, because honestly, that's who we insure, IT professionals. But they test the results and they give you completion results, and it's expensive. So, and it actually kind of goes into the first question. A lot of our accounts are small businesses. We can go up to 50 million in revenue, but most of our accounts are small businesses. And here's the question, I guess, is we insure mostly small businesses with SafetyTek. How many of our current guys use it, and what are the results? Because honestly, our average premium is probably $2,000, and we can get into the sub 1,000 range depending on what they're doing and how they're doing it and stuff. So, do you have results and how much it helps customers?
I don't have specific statistics that are, I would say, objective statistics, and and even from a subjective statistics. One of the reasons why we don't have we obviously have statistics on the uptake and how many policyholders take advantage of services. We have that data, but obviously some stuff information we cannot share. But the thing to note that's important as it relates to the question is that when you provide these services that the policyholder uses, it's important that, in a sense, it's separated from underwriting. We want the policyholders to take advantage of the services so that they don't feel like they're going to be penalized later for not doing something. So, for example, if we learn that, a policyholder deployed SkillBridge to, 50 people, but yet the 50 people never took the course, we don't want to penalize them for that. Of course, we want them to take the course, but it's something that it's for their benefit, not necessarily for the carriers. It's not a direct benefit back to the carriers, and things like Dashlane as well. It's really for their purpose, or BitSite, like the BitSite score. We want them to use it and look for signals that an issue might be happening, but it's not something we want to say. We leverage and say you're not doing this and penalizing them for not doing something. So we try and separate ourselves. Or another great example is when a policyholder will look to do a phishing simulation. We don't get the results of those reports because we want them to do it and we want them to get the honest results. And the carriers, we step out of the way and let the service get delivered directly from our partners. So.
Right on. Well, thank you. Just a couple more questions. I know we're running way over, and I apologize. It was kind of scheduled as a 30-minute webinar, but two things. On the BitSite, when does the trial start? The 14-day trial start? Is it the effective date of the policy or just when the sign-up date?
It's just when they sign up for it. They get an email, and when they click to activate the subscription, that's when the trial starts. It's not whenever they're ready to start it. That's when it starts, not at the binding date. Right on. And is it only available on SafetyTek policies, or are these services available basically company-wide for all Chubb cyber policies? I'll disclaimer this. Generally speaking, if there's cyber coverage, that the services will be available. But talk to your underwriter and to reach out to me to validate. Right on. And I'll just a quick plug, I guess. We have our next SafetyTek training webinar is on the 31st. So I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we'll go over the eligibility, the coverages. We'll touch on this a little bit, the revenue thresholds, and some of those things. So that's on the 31st. If you guys don't know what the SafetyTek program is or whatnot. And one final question, and this may not be a very good final question because it's kind of a long one maybe, but could you give us an idea of the savings compared to the $3,000 for some of the phishing, response planning, vulnerability, or SkillBridge, those types of things? So that's a tough question to answer. Yeah, I know. Is it like is it half or is it what? Is it what? Is it just kind of give a general idea? Is it like half of what you normally see, what people would normally pay, or is it? You know what I mean? I would say it's really hard to give an actual discounted rate. What it would cost on the street. I mean, I can't disclose that. It's certainly something that they would have to investigate themselves. All I can tell you, like from experience, when someone who's familiar with something like BitSite and they hear they can get it for $3,000 a year, I usually hear the thuds as the jaws hit the tables of the people on the call or people in the room. And same thing with that. I mean, same thing with Dashlane. You can do your math to figure out, go on their site and see how much Dashlane costs, right, per license, and you get an idea of some of the savings there. And I think To add to that, though, and one other really, important point about the pricing, to us, it's not just the cost savings for these services, whether they're flat rate or whether they come as complimentary. The important thing is that all of our partners have, in a sense, bought into our approach to servicing our policyholders, and they don't see it as a sales pipeline for them. They've bought into our vision of servicing, and they work with us, to achieve that vision, not just through the pricing, but through the entire program. And it's really important to us that when a service is delivered, that it is not a sales pipeline for those partners. They are just providing the service, and if the policyholder doesn't want to continue, they're not going to be bugged by the partners for additional business. And that's really, really important, and something we strive to do, in addition to getting the costs as reasonable as possible.
Right on. Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Good point. Okay, well, man, again, Russ, I really appreciate your time, and thank you, everybody, for not only coming, but staying on. Like, not a single person has dropped off. So I really, really appreciate it. I will send a follow-up with a link to a sign-up and an app, this material, and some other fun stuff, and we'll get that out this afternoon. Thank you, Russ, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks, everyone.